I didn't find out about the wedding from an invitation. I found out from Facebook. A grainy photo, bad lighting, and a smile that I used to know. My granddaughter, Tessa, was standing under a string of twinkle lights in the backyard of a farmhouse I'd never seen before. She wore white lace and fake diamonds, and next to her was a man I had never met. They were toasting with champagne, surrounded by people. And I wasn't one of them. I blinked at the screen like maybe I was dreaming. Surely I had just missed the message. Maybe my phone had glitched. But no. I checked. There was no invitation. No call. No, "Grandma, I'm getting married." No, "I'd love for you to be there." Not even a text. She hadn't forgotten me. She had chosen to leave me out. And the worst part? She was smiling like I'd never existed. I sat back on my floral couch in the old house I built with my late husband. The same house Tessa used to visit every summer. The same porch she used to swing on, braiding her hair while asking me questions about what love really meant. I wiped my thumb across the phone screen. The photo didn't change. It didn't take me back in time. It didn't fix a thing. But it did something else. It reminded me of what she didn't know. She didn't know what I kept hidden behind the dusty boxes in the attic. She didn't know what my husband left me after all those quiet years of farming and fixing broken fence posts. She didn't know I was worth $7 million. No, he never would. Not unless she earned it. I stood slowly, knees aching from the cold, and walked down the hallway. Opened the old cedar chest. The one nobody had opened in decades. Inside was the letter. The account papers. The trust fund. Untouched. My name was still on every page. But hers, well, that part might change soon. Because she thought she could leave me behind. He thought I was old, soft, forgettable. But she didn't know I had watched her grow up with eyes sharper than she thought. She didn't know I'd seen the changes, how sweet Tessa became sharp. How she stopped visiting, stopped calling, stopped caring. And she didn't know that this wasn't about revenge. This was about remembering. About reminding. And about setting things in motion that couldn't be undone. If this story already has you curious, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of resilience, betrayal, and redemption. My name is Cora Whitman. I'm 78 years old, and I've lived in the same white farmhouse in the North Carolina foothills for the last 52 years. The land here is slow and quiet. You can hear the frogs at night and the wind in the barn roof when the storms roll in. Tessa used to love that sound. The last time she came here was 4 years ago in the spring. I remember because the pear trees were blooming and the bees had come early. She pulled into the driveway in a silver sedan I didn't recognize, wearing sunglasses too big for her face and boots that didn't suit her. She hugged me lightly, arms that barely touched, and gave me a bottle of wine I couldn't drink because of the medication. We sat on the porch like we always used to, but she kept checking her phone. I tried to ask her about her life, where she was living, what she was working on, but her answers came clipped, rehearsed, like she'd already decided she didn't owe me much anymore. "I'm really busy, Gran," she said. "You know how it is." No, I didn't. Not anymore. She stayed just under an hour. Told me she had a friend's birthday that night in Asheville. Promised she'd come back soon. But I knew. I could feel it in my bones, the same way I feel a storm before it arrives. That was goodbye. Not the word, but the act. She backed out of the gravel driveway with one hand on the wheel, waving lazily through the window. I waved back. Then I went inside and cried in the kitchen. Not because she didn't stay, but because she didn't see me anymore. After my husband Earl passed, I didn't sell the land. People told me I should, said it was too much for an old woman. But Earl and I had worked too hard too long. Every board in the barn, every tile in the kitchen was part of our story. And Earl, well, he'd been smarter than most gave him credit for. What people didn't know was that behind all the mud and calluses, Earl had a sharp mind. He invested every dime we didn't need. Land, stocks, a rare coin collection tucked away in the root cellar under the old floorboards. When he died, he left it all to me. With one instruction. "Don't tell anyone," he said on the last morning we shared coffee. "Let them love you for who you are, not what they think you have." So I didn't. Even Tessa didn't know. Back when she was younger, she loved to follow me through the garden, bare feet and grass-stained knees, asking why tomatoes had so many seeds or why butterflies didn't stay in one place. She called me every week when she was in college, sent postcards from every city she visited, told me I was her favorite person in the world. But somewhere in her 20s the calls slowed, the visits stopped, and the letters turned into likes on old Facebook posts. I thought maybe it was just the way things were now, until I saw the wedding photo. That wasn't distance, that was choice. I spent the next few days going through my records. The old trust Earl had left, the investment statements, the will we'd drafted together, naming Tessa as one of the primary heirs. She had no idea how much we had built behind closed doors. She thought I was just a woman in a rocking chair living off Social Security and canned soup. But the truth was louder than she knew. And now that she had cut me out, I had to decide if I would do the same. I called my lawyer, a quiet man named Malcolm who'd been handling my paperwork since before Tessa was born. I want to review the trust, I told him. Of course, Ms. Whitman. Any changes? Possibly, I said. It's time some people learned how quickly things can shift. He hesitated. Should I be concerned? No, I said. But someone else should be. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the photo again. The one from the wedding. Tessa had always wanted a big family gathering. She used to beg me to bake peach cobbler for her imaginary reception. Now she had one. And I wasn't there. No seat saved. No mention in the caption. No sign that I had ever mattered at all. I closed the app, powered off the phone, and then I picked up a pen and started a letter I never thought I'd write. It was short, just 2 pages, written in the careful cursive my mama taught me when I was a girl. I folded the letter 3 times and placed it in a plain white envelope. No card, no glitter, just the truth. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it in clarity. Tessa, I saw your wedding. You looked happy. I wasn't invited and that part hurt. But what hurt more was knowing I stopped being someone you thought about at all. I wanted you to know I noticed. And I'm still here. Love, Gran. I set the envelope on the table and stared at it for hours. Thought about mailing it. Thought about calling instead. Thought about driving the 2 hours to Raleigh and dropping it off at her door. But I didn't. Because sometimes silence says more. The next morning I went to see Malcolm in town. His office sits behind the old library, tucked between a bakery and a tax shop. He offered me coffee but I declined. My stomach had been too tight for days. He laid the will out on the table. The one Earl and I made 20 years ago. It still had Tessa's name listed beside mine. The land, the house, the investments. Do you want to remove her? He asked gently. I shook my head. Not yet. Then what? I want to build something else. A separate fund. Quiet. Something she won't know about. He nodded, already understanding. A clause, he asked. Conditions. Yes, I said. One condition. What is it? She has to remember who I am. He raised an eyebrow. You'll have to define that. I looked out the window at the bare trees beyond the parking lot. If she shows up. Not for money, not for favors, but just to sit on the porch again, to ask me how I'm doing. If she does that, if she remembers me without needing anything, then the fund opens to her. And if she doesn't? I smiled softly. Then it'll go to someone who would have sat beside me even if I had nothing. The following week I began donating small amounts from the trust to places that mattered to me. The church that still left casseroles at my doorstep when Earl passed. The animal shelter where I adopted Daisy, my old hound who died last winter. The scholarship fund for young women in agriculture. Every dollar I gave felt like a page turned in a chapter one was ready to close. And Tessa? She kept posting. Beach photos. Latte art. Hashtags about hustle and gratitude. Still no call. Still no letter. One afternoon I ran into her father, my son Calvin, at the hardware store. He looked surprised to see me out. You holding up okay, Mama? He asked. I always do, I replied. He hesitated. I know she didn't invite you, he finally said. It wasn't my decision. I know, I said calmly. She's independent, headstrong. I raised her to be that way. But I think she's ashamed," he added. "About the distance. About how things have changed." She could have picked up the phone. He nodded. "She still might." "I'm not waiting," I said. He didn't argue. That night I took the letter I wrote and slid it into the fireplace. Watch it curl, blacken, and disappear. I didn't need her to read it anymore. I needed her to feel it. To sense the absence where warmth used to be. A few days later I got a card in the mail. Not from Tessa. From a girl named Lacey, one of the scholarship recipients. She wrote in purple ink, "Dear Mrs. Whitman, I just wanted to say thank you. No one's ever believed in me before. But now I know I can do something with my life. You changed everything." That's when I cried. Because the person who forgot me didn't matter as much as the one who never even knew me, but was grateful anyway. The next family gathering was for Easter. Not at my house, those days were long gone, but at Calvin's. He still lived 2 towns over in a red brick rancher with a wide backyard and a vegetable garden he never watered right. Every year he invited me. And every year I went, even when it meant smiling through small talk and pretending I didn't notice Tessa wasn't there. But this time, she was supposed to be. Calvin said so himself. "She and Jamie are coming," he told me on the phone. "Got in last night. They're bringing dessert." I didn't ask who Jamie was. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing I hadn't been told anything about the man my granddaughter married. So I baked a pie. I wore my lavender skirt and my pearl clip-on earrings. I wrapped my hair in a scarf and painted it a little color. I wasn't dressing for them. I was dressing for the woman inside me who still believed in showing up with grace, even when grace hadn't been returned. When I got there, the house smelled like roasted ham and sweet potatoes. Kids screamed in the backyard. Folding chairs dotted the lawn. And there was an extra seat at the table, one I could tell had been added at the last minute. "She's running late," Calvin said, kissing my cheek. I nodded. Then I waited. 30 minutes. Then an hour. Then another. When the prayer was said, the seat was still empty. She said she got stuck in traffic. Calvin mumbled after dessert, fiddling with the serving spoon. I didn't ask where. Because I knew where she wasn't. With us. With me. That night, as I lay in bed back at the farmhouse, the silence of the land pressing in like a second skin, I thought about all the places Tessa had been since the last time she hugged me with meaning. New York. Boston. San Francisco. Every corner of the country. But never back to the porch where her roots were. I got up and poured myself a glass of water. The kitchen was dim, the only light coming from the oven clock. It was 11:42. And I realized then that I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way people think of anger. Raised voices and slammed doors. This was different. This was the kind of anger that comes when the love you poured into someone doesn't just evaporate. It's ignored. 2 days later, Malcolm called. "How would you feel about adding a second beneficiary?" he asked. "For the contingency trust?" I said, "Yes." I hesitated, then said, "There's a young woman named Lacey. She wrote me a letter last week. She is a scholarship student?" "She is. You'd like her to be added?" "If Tessa never shows," I said, "Lacey gets everything." There was a pause on the other end. "You know what this means," Malcolm said. "I do," I said. "I've known since Easter." Spring turned to summer. I spent my mornings on the porch watching the fog burn off the fields, listening to the birds fight for the feeder. Sometimes I imagined what I would have said if Tessa had shown up that day. Maybe nothing. Maybe just handed her a plate, poured her some lemonade and let the silence speak for us both. Or maybe I would have told her what Earl always said when people asked why we never moved into town. Because we built this life with our own hands. You don't abandon that just because someone else stopped appreciating it. The last message I got from Tessa came as a comment on an old photo I posted. It was a picture of the farm, sun setting over the barn. She wrote, "Beautiful. Hope you're well." No call. No visit. Just those 4 words. I didn't reply. Because by then I had already learned. Some people only remember you when it's convenient. I first saw her with the peaches. She was standing at the farmer's market downtown, holding one to her nose, checking for ripeness the same way Earl used to teach Tessa when she was small. At first I thought it was her. Same dark hair, same posture, same way of brushing her bangs out of her face. But when she turned, it wasn't Tessa. It was Lacey, the girl who'd written to thank me for the scholarship. I didn't plan to speak. I was just going to smile and keep walking. But she looked up and saw me, eyes wide, like she was trying to remember if I was someone famous or just someone she'd dreamt of once. "Mrs. Whitman?" she asked, holding the peach like it might drop. "Yes," I said, surprised by how kind her voice sounded in my ears. She walked toward me slowly, then quickly, and hugged me. Not a polite one-armed hug. A real one. The kind Tessa used to give when she was little and smelled like sunblock and grape juice. "I've been meaning to write again," Lacey said, pulling back with red cheeks. "I just got accepted into a university program. Agriculture and sustainability. I wouldn't even be here without you." I smiled. Not because of the success, but because of how much she meant it. "What school?" I asked. "UNC Asheville," she said. "I'll be living close to campus. I even got a part-time job at the nursery. Plants and people, it's kind of perfect." She talked with her hands. Her words rolled out like sunshine, warm and unguarded. And for the first time in a long while I felt seen. Not as a woman with money. Not as someone who needed pity. But as a person who had made a difference. "You still working on the farm?" she asked. "I do," I said. "Not as fast as I used to, but the tomatoes don't mind waiting." We both laughed. Then she grew quiet. "I never knew my grandmother," she said. "But if I had, I hope she would have been like you." After we said goodbye, I sat in my truck with the peach she handed me. It wasn't the prettiest one, but it smelled like August and memory. And I realized something. Sometimes the family we try to hold on to lets go of us. But sometimes the family we never expected reaches out with both hands. That night, I opened the trust paperwork again. Lacey's name was already on it. But I added a note in my own handwriting. If she continues on this path, the full balance may be released early. Her heart is ready now, even if her age isn't. I signed it, dated it, and placed it in the locked drawer in the guest bedroom. The one with Earl's things, the one no one had opened in years. The next day Calvin called. "She and Jamie bought a house," he said, sounding tired. "Said it's not really a good time to visit." I didn't respond. She asked if you were still in the farmhouse. "Where else would I be?" I said. "She said she'll try to come before Christmas." I almost laughed. Almost. "You don't need to cover for her," I told him. "I'm not," he said. "But I still hope she does it right." "I don't," I replied. "Not anymore." The hope had turned to something better. Clarity. And in clarity I found peace. Because I no longer wanted to be remembered out of guilt. I wanted to be honored with sincerity. And if that never came from her, I was finally okay with that. A week later, I was in the attic pulling down the fall wreaths when I found the box. It was tucked behind a row of canning jars and old lamp shades, covered in dust and wrapped in twine the way Earl used to do when he didn't want something to fall apart. I didn't remember storing anything important in there. It was labeled simply, family. I brought it down one step at a time, knees stiff but heart curious. In the living room, I placed the box on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were old photographs. Dozens of them. Tessa in overalls, face sticky with watermelon. Tessa on Earl's shoulders, waving a tiny American flag. Tessa in the garden, holding a tomato bigger than her hand. The years poured out of the box like warm wind. Pictures I'd nearly forgotten, moments that once meant everything. But tucked near the bottom was one I hadn't seen before. It was Tessa, maybe 13 years old, standing beside me in the kitchen. We were laughing. I had flour on my cheek. She had a bowl of cookie dough in her hand. I held that photo like it was made of porcelain. Because at that moment we had been everything to each other. I sat down and cried, not because she was gone, but because I had once had her completely. And she had me. That night, I lit a candle on the porch and watched the sun dip behind the hills. The leaves had started to turn golden and red and wild. The mailbox sat empty. The phone is silent. Still no word from Tessa. but somehow I felt something shift. Not in her. In me. I was no longer waiting. The following morning I went to the bank with Malcolm. "I'd like to make it official," I said. "The adjustment to the trust?" he asked. "No," I said. "The change in direction." He gave me a look. Quiet, respectful. "Full revocation?" I nodded. "Tessa's name comes off everything. Even the land?" "Especially the land." We signed the paperwork. Stamped it. Filed it. And that was that. Later I returned home and looked at the photograph again. Then I placed it in a small wooden frame and set it on the mantel. Not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. A reminder of who we were. And who we no longer were. Because sometimes the only way to move forward is to bury the version of someone you still miss, so you can mourn them properly. It was early November when the phone finally rang. I was folding laundry by the window, watching the last of the maple leaves drift down like tired confessions. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number from Raleigh. For a moment I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick it up. "Gran." Her voice was soft, uncertain. Almost like she was afraid I wouldn't recognize it. "I wasn't sure this was still your number," she said after a pause. "It is," I replied, folding a dish towel. "It's been the same since before you were born." She laughed, but it was thin. "I know I should have called sooner," she said. I didn't say anything. I got busy. Life got a lot. "You got married," I said, keeping my voice even. Another pause. Longer this time. "I did. You looked lovely in the photos." Silence. "I'm sorry I didn't invite you," she said at last. "It wasn't meant to hurt you. But it did." "I know." There was a crack in her voice now. Small but real. "I've been thinking about you," she said. "Especially lately. Jamie and I were talking about our families and I just kept thinking of summers at your place. The porch. The garden. And the cookies." She chuckled. "You always let me lick the spoon." "I still do," I said. "Just not for you." Another pause. "Can I come visit?" she asked. That question hung in the air like smoke. I looked out at the fading leaves, the empty porch swing, the garden that had already gone to seed. "I don't know," I said honestly. "It's been a long time." "I understand." She sounded small now. Not like the bride in the pictures. More like the little girl I used to carry inside after she fell asleep in the grass. "I won't stay long," she added. I'd like to see you." I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. "I'll be home Sunday afternoon," I said. "If you decide to come." Sunday came, and so did the storm. Rain lashed at the windows by noon, and the wind carried the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. I made a pot of soup anyway, set 2 places at the table, lit a candle like I always used to when family came over, and waited. 3 o'clock. No car. Still nothing. By 5 the soup had gone cold. I blew out the candle and poured a bowl just for myself. And that's when the headlights hit the driveway. I didn't rush to the door. I stood by the window, watching as she stepped out of the car in boots far too thin for the mud. She pulled her coat tight around her and walked slowly to the porch. When I opened the door, she stood there drenched, cheeks red, hair tangled. "I didn't think you'd still be here," she said. "I told you I would be," I replied. She looked around as if expecting to see something familiar, but everything had changed. The cushions were new. The paint on the shutters had faded. Even though I was different. Older. Wiser. Quieter. I stepped aside. She entered like someone walking into a church for the first time in years. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, steam rising from our bowls, though the soup had long gone lukewarm. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The clock ticked on the wall. The storm outside had calmed to a drizzle, the wind tapping at the windows like it too was listening. "I forgot how quiet it is here," Tessa said finally. I nodded. "The quiet tells the truth." She looked down at her hands. "I was scared to come," she admitted. "Of me?" I asked. "No. Of what I might see. Of what I might have lost." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to. But sometimes silence answers louder than words. He took a breath. Jamie doesn't know much about this place. I didn't tell him. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't think he'd understand it. She reached for the spoon but didn't eat. I've been running, she said softly. From the roots. From people who knew me before I knew who I wanted to be. You think I didn't do the same once? I asked. Her eyes lifted. I left my family in Tennessee when I was just 19. Moved here with Earl and never looked back. They said I'd regret it. But I never did. Because I built something worth staying for. Tessa blinked and a tear slid down her cheek before she could catch it. I thought if I stayed away the guilt would fade, she said. But it didn't. It just hardened. You could have called, I said. I know. You could have written. I know. I was here the whole time. She looked down ashamed. I don't know how to come back from that. I placed my hand on the table between us. Not reaching for hers. Just placing it there. You already started, I said. She looked at me eyes wide. Then she reached out and rested her hand gently over mine. I missed you, Gran. I know. I thought, maybe you didn't want to see me. I thought maybe you didn't care to try. She nodded. I made mistakes, she said. And I don't expect forgiveness to come cheap. It never does. But I'm here. I looked at her and for the first time in years, I saw not the adult woman who walked away, but the little girl who used to dance barefoot through my garden, face tilted to the sky. And that girl I loved. So loved. Always would. We sat for a long time saying nothing, letting the warmth return. Eventually I stood and poured fresh soup. Lit the candle again. Placed a warm roll on her plate like I used to do when she was small. And for the first time in years she bowed her head before the meal and said grace. Tessa stayed longer than I expected. Not just through dinner but through the evening storm, the quiet hour when the wind settles and the porch creaks just right. She sat beside me in the living room, wrapped in one of Earl's old quilts, her boots off, toes tucked beneath her legs like she used to do when she was 12. We didn't talk much. I didn't need to. She glanced at the photos on the mantel, the one of me and Earl, the one of her as a baby in the sunflower field, and a framed letter from the scholarship board thanking me for my donation. She smiled when she saw it. Are you still helping kids? She asked. I help the ones who show up, I said without hesitation. She nodded. After a while she pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos. Showed me one of Jamie, her husband, tall, quiet-looking, kind eyes. Then a few of their apartments, their cat, her garden. She hesitated before swiping to the next. This is the house we're looking at, she said. We want to move next spring. I looked at the picture. A fixer-upper with a wide porch and tall grass. You'll need to learn to patch a roof, I said. She laughed. Jamie's useless with tools. Then he's lucky you had a grandmother who isn't. She looked over at me, suddenly serious. I know I hurt you, she said. But I never stopped thinking about you. I didn't answer. Because the truth is, thinking about someone isn't the same as showing up. And she knew that. So she said something else instead. Are you okay? She asked. It was such a simple question. But it was the first time in years she'd asked it. I am now, I said. When she got up to leave, the rain had stopped. I offered her an umbrella, but she shook her head. I needed the drive, she said. I needed this. She hugged me longer this time. And as she stepped onto the porch, she turned back and asked, will you come visit us when we move in? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, we'll see. Because forgiveness isn't a transaction. It's a slow thawing. And we were just at the first warm breeze. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the trust documents again. I unfolded the page where her name used to be. Then I looked at the empty space beside Lacey's. I didn't rewrite the will. Not yet. Because now there was a question hanging in the air. Not one Tessa had asked, but one she might finally be ready to earn the answer to. It was 2 months after that visit when the letter arrived. A real one. Envelope. Zip. Her handwriting on the front. Inside was a short note. Gran, we closed on the house. Jamie and I finished painting the porch yesterday. Soft blue like yours. I made your cornbread recipe last week. It didn't taste right, but I'm learning. I hope you'll come see it someday. Not for the house. For me, love always, Tessa. I read it 3 times. Not because the words were perfect, but because they were real. They didn't ask for anything. They just offered. A week later I called Malcolm. "I'm ready," I said. "To restore her name?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "But not the way it was." I didn't want to give out of guilt, or tradition, or a habit. I wanted to give from choice, from proof of growth. So we restructured the trust. Tessa's name was added back, but as a beneficiary under one condition. She must continue visiting at least once a year. Not for inheritance, not for obligation, just to sit. Sure. And if she doesn't, then the remaining balance goes to Lacey. 2 days later I mailed Tessa a letter of my own. Just 1 sentence. "I'm proud of the woman you're trying to become." By spring the farm was blooming again. I planted wildflowers along the fence, painted the porch swing, replaced the old wind chimes with ones that sounded like bells. And then one Sunday afternoon a car pulled into the driveway. Tessa stepped out holding a covered pie dish. "I tried peaches," she said, grinning. I smiled. "Let's see if it holds up." We sat on the porch side by side, the past between us not erased but softened. He told me about the house, the chipped tiles, the plans for a garden. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I don't need anything from you, Gran. Just your time." And that's when I knew. This was the reward. Not the apology, not the visits, but the shift. She had stopped running from who she was, and started remembering where she came from. That summer I watched the fields turn gold, and the air grew heavy with heat and cicada songs. And I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Because I didn't just win. I didn't just outlive the silence. I taught someone that the richest thing they can inherit is connection. And I left behind something better than money. The kind with roots. The kind that stays. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away just yet. Tell us in the comments. Asterisk, have you ever been left out by the very people you raised? Let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your story too. Like this video if you believe in quiet strength and poetic justice. Subscribe for more true stories that honor the women time tried to forget. And share this story with someone who needs a reminder. You don't have to be loud to be powerful.